This is the Web Platform Podcast, a developer discussion that dives deep into all things web. We chat about software development for mobile, HDTV, wearables, robotics, user experience, mentoring, and everything related to building products and services for the web platform of today, tomorrow, and beyond. Your hosts today are myself, Erik Isaksen, UX engineer at 3Pillar Global, and Christian Smith, open source developer and startup enthusiast. This is episode number 5, and we are joined by Brazilian mastermind behind CustomElements.io and web components expert, Zeno Rocha. Today, we will be talking about web components, the community surrounding it, and how to get started using and contributing to web components today. Zeno is a front-end engineer at LifeRay, co-creator of webcomponents.org and CustomElements.io, co-founder of Brazil.js, a Google developer expert, and front-end development global community leader. Welcome, Zeno.
Welcome, Erik.
Woohoo! Please, can you tell us about your career? You know, how did you get involved with the web components community?
Yeah, so I first started programming with C, C++, ActionScript, PHP, all those stuff during college. But the thing I was most excited about all my life was front-end development. So I started doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So, and I always wanted to be the best guy in whatever I do. So when I started learning front-end stuff, I was like, yeah, let's learn it. And I was working really hard to learn it and everything. And then came HTML5, and I was like, yeah, HTML5 is so nice and everything. Nobody here in Brazil, I'm from Brazil, and nobody here in Brazil was doing HTML5 back in 2008, 2009. So inspired by Paul Irish, I decided to study a little bit more about HTML5. And when you see that we are starting your career, right, in programming and everything, if you want to be like the best guy in Java, for example, you need to compete with guys that are working with Java like for 20 years already, 15 years already. So when I saw HTML5, I noticed that could be a technology that I could study. And when you have a new technology, so everybody starts from the same place, right? And if you study harder than everybody, maybe you can be a reference in that technology faster than other people. So that was the decision I made in my career to invest my time in HTML5. And because I really loved HTML5, it was so cool. Everything was so nice. And
nice
the
shiny
same happened to
logo
me.
And everything.
Yeah.
It's all brand new. This logo comes out and it's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really excited about new stuff. So when I see something new, I'm like, oh, let me study this thing. And the same happened with web components. It was like love for the first time. I saw that and I was like, this will change everything. I need to stop everything what I'm doing and start studying web components.
Yeah, I think for me it was the I/O talk. And I know you had mentioned it, I think, on a blog or something. And I was like, yeah, that was the first place. I forget who the guys were, but they were talking about Polymer and web components. And it was like, oh, my God, we're going to have this stuff native in the browser. I must be a part of this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the opportunity, to shape the future of those technologies. It's so exciting that I couldn't just let it go. I needed to study it.
So what made you I guess for listeners out there who don't know about it, can you tell us about CustomElements.io and what made you pursue that?
Yeah, so after that I/O talk, I got interested in web components and everything, and I was preparing a talk for the Brazil.js conference. So it's a really big conference, like for 1,000 people in the venue, like 70,000 people in the broadcast. So it's a really huge conference. And I was studying and building components for this conference just to demo and everything. And I noticed that I needed a place to show these elements that I was creating, show all these web components. And not just me, other people that could build their own web components. Would be nice if we had a place just to show all of them in the same place. So I started building this gallery. It's at CustomElements.io. We started in August last year, and now it's crazy. Lots of components. Let me check the number. right now how many we have. I think we have almost 300. It's 281. And
That's 40 more than last week that I saw.
Yeah,
So that's
there's a
awesome.
lot, and there's so many crazy stuff like elements for GIFs, elements for voices, GitHub cards. This one is really nice, and lots of elements that wraps other APIs like Google Maps, the Get User Media API.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing this gallery and creating my own components, and that was the main reason. I got some friends together and I decided to, hey, let's build this thing, guys. And this will be the first gallery, web components gallery. So we need to do a good work here. So that's what we did.
Yeah, when I first heard of you, I was on GitHub and I saw that you had some base element setups, because that was something I was really looking for. Like, okay, let me see what the best practices are for building one of these things. And then that led me to see customelements.io, and it was pretty awesome. And eventually, customelements.io was being used by Mozilla, if I remember correctly. So.
Yeah. So what happened was when I first launched customelements.io, I'm like a boilerplate aficionado. I really, when I start to develop something, I need to formalize a boilerplate. So I did this in 2011. So I created jQuery boilerplate. It totally sucked in the beginning. So it was interesting, this story, because I wanted to create a jQuery plugin, and I didn't have created any other jQuery plugin in my life. But I started to see and research for boilerplates and best practice to build my jQuery plugin, and there was no like HTML5 boilerplate. My idea was to base in like this, you have all the best practice in the same place, and there was no like this. So I decided that, hey, I will create the main jQuery boilerplate stuff. And of course, I didn't have any experience in creating jQuery plugins. So
that's how we learn, though, right?
Yeah, that's how we learn. So I put together some stuff. I launched it on GitHub. The first day, and I put some site and everything, because humans are like this. If you just put your code on GitHub, okay, some people will recognize the value of it, but most people will just, okay, it's just another code. And so I put this little nice website and everything, and I launched it. On the first day, we had like 30 visits, something like that. No big deal. But then in the second day, Smashing Magazine tweeted, and it had like lots and lots of visits, and lots of people seeing that project. And then Hick Waldron, you know that guy?
Yeah.
So he's a really experienced JavaScript developer, much, much more experienced than me. So he sent a pull request. And this pull request was, hey, everything is wrong. Delete everything. That's the only way that you can build something new and something better than this. And when I saw that pull request, I was like, oh my God, what I did, and everybody complaining that piece of code was just a shit and everything. And I was like, oh my God, what I have done. And I accepted that pull request, and we started to build it again from the ground. And now with the help of Eddie Osmani, which in that time was working at AOL, and now he's in Google and everything. So we improved it, and now it's a little bit better than it was. So when I first started with web components, it was the same thing. I created this boilerplate, and first it was a boilerplate only for Polymer, and now we have for Xtags and for just native JavaScript. And recently, Xtag, the project from Mozilla, they decided to use our gallery because they didn't want to create this new registry. And I was really happy about this decision. We made some tweaks that they needed. So they needed a feature to just point to the Xtags, only to the Xtags components inside of customelements.io. I implemented it, and now they started using it too.
It really speaks to the value of customelements.io because Xtags had their own repository, which they open sourced as well. So I was looking at that, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll just put this up on my own server, and I could do some private ones, some private components, and put those up so I can practice and play, and I won't get too many pull requests saying, dude, you're doing it all wrong. But or maybe, you know, we should. I think it's awesome, like to get schooled by people who you look up to, and you're like, wow, you know, maybe I should do it this way. That's productive, I think, rather than taking it as, oh my God, I didn't do it, which you didn't. You took it in a very positive way.
Yeah. At first time I was really scared, but then when I finally got calmed, I decided to, yeah, you need to do the best decision in those cases. You don't want to teach something bad to other people. And I think that's the magic of GitHub. You know, you put your code, it might be something like awesome. It might be something that it's really bad, but that's the way you learn it. And I learned so much just by throwing my code there. It's not a big deal, you know, you just get in it, you just started your project, you just push something to master, and that's it. Your code is there and everybody can see it. So I really recommend other people, and especially people that are beginning with programming, to just throw their code there and see what happens. Yeah.
Christian, do you want to speak to the work that you've been doing as far as like open source, right? Because that's a really good point, that it's out there, people could see it, and it is a good thing.
You know, when you first start doing that, there's a lot of crickets. It's very quiet, and nobody's paying attention. And then, you know, one person comes along and submits a pull request or something, and then you start doing Hangouts and pair programming together or whatever, and then all of a sudden things get more exciting, and you don't have those opportunities when you keep it all to yourself. I mean, it's really good to be out there.
Yeah.
You know, getting back to the web components piece too, you know, one of the criticisms I get, people tell me, oh, well, not often, but I get people saying, oh, this is just XML all over again. This is glorified XML, you know, with a bunch of heavy polyfills and polyfills on top of stuff to make it, you know, to retrofit it into whatever you have. So why? I mean, as far as like, browsers seem to be moving pretty fast. Internet Explorer obviously a little slower, but they're adding more than they ever did. I saw they have promises and some other things on there, so that's really exciting. But I mean, as far as like, if I'm a Java developer and I work with HTML, I'm not so passionate about it, JavaScript even, you know, maybe I'm not so interested. What would be the advantage to using these over Angular or Ember or some MVC JavaScript framework?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the default human reaction to new things. It's like just criticize and put it away, and you know, I don't want to see this until it's done. But I don't totally agree with those criticizes about it's just XML revisit, because web components, it's like a set of specs, right? So we have the custom elements spec, we have Shadow DOM, we have HTML imports. So, and building your own element is just one part of the spec. And so, and we never had this ability to create components in a standard way. So we have been creating encapsulated code in different ways. We have jQuery plugins, we have jQuery UI widgets, we have YUI widgets, we have so many different stuff and so many different ways of creating widgets, components, and all those reusable blocks of code. But we never had something that is a standard. And that's why I'm so excited about this. I know that today we need polyfills, we need those layers that help you running this piece of code in the browser nowadays, but it's just a temporary thing. You know, in a couple of years, couple of months, and I know this layer will be gone, and we'll be able to use this naturally.
Yeah, just for listeners out there too, this changes so rapidly. Like this is a very exciting time for the web platform, because we're having like mutation observers in JavaScript. You know, those are almost all supported by IE 10 and up, I think. You know, now, or even it might be 11, I'm not sure, but some of that stuff goes away, and the browser's cycles are faster. I think it's 3 months for Firefox. I think it's even faster for Chrome. So, you know, IE we don't know because they're not out openly doing this, but it's pretty exciting. You know, the community is really built around. I happen to agree, obviously. I've been working with web components for a little while now. And the thing that really spoke to me was Rob Dodson's Cascadia JS talk. I don't know if you've seen it, but he talks about, copying all of the things. We have Bootstrap and we copy all the things and we put them over here and we do these things with them over and over. It's like insanity. And, web components allows us to not do that anymore. It's built in. It's something you don't have to copy everything together. Some of the things that, stuff like Polymer and Xtags build on top of that is not part of the actual specs, but more along the lines of these frameworks that we have today, like Angular and Ember, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like deploying production-ready type of things, that's one of the things that people raise too with me is like, there's all these, since it's so bleeding edge, to the point of that, how do you build something for production? Because hey, it's not all standard, and I know that there's production apps out there. On HTML5 San Francisco meetup group you spoke at, Salesforce had announced that they had something in Polymer in production already. So it's these things are here, and to your point with the XML, I just heard Bruce Lawson on the Web Ahead talking about like the main element and these elements from HTML5 and the anatomy of them, where there's actual ARIA stuff built into those, so that for accessibility, if you use main over div, class equals main or something like you would have done before, a wrapper. There's all these built-in things and properties, things that you don't necessarily think that an element would have. So there's all these properties and things that lifecycle events, which you spoke about at Scotland JS as well. There's all these things that are part of the web component elements. As far as production-ready apps, what are your feelings as far as how should people build for this, or should they?
Yeah, the way I see it is just exactly how HTML5 was in 2009. So there's this new thing. Everybody is excited about it, but it's not production ready, and standards are being developed and everything. A couple of people started to use HTML5, just like a couple of people are using web components right now. And those people are crazy, because this is something that is being written, the standard, the spec. But the crazy people are the ones that make the changes in the world and just build the spec and the web platform as general. So yeah, there's a lot of problems in using those technologies in production. Things will change. You'll be pissed off. It's just, yeah. So you'll be real excited in the beginning, and then something will change. You'll be angry, and that's the process. But you'll learn it so much in this way. And so if you want to use it in production right now, you just need to keep this in mind. Hey, I'm using this, things may change. Like H-group tag was removed from HTML5. And how many people use H-group in their applications? And how many removed it from their applications when it was published? There are just a few people. So yeah, that's the price we need to pay when all those new technologies are able to be used in the browser, and developers, those crazy developers like us, are like, hey, let's use it. And that's the price you need to pay. Just pay attention whatever is happening to the technology, and that's it. I think you should use it in production, but you need to be careful about it.
There's a flip side to that too, where you can actually get, some people like me actually get bored if not enough things are breaking. It's a sign that maybe you're not using the right thing. Maybe you're not pushing the limits because there's not enough ugly details to figure out, and not enough of the rug being pulled out from under your feet every day. Which noticed. I was looking at your GitHub profile, and I noticed that you have something like 3,000 contributions to date, and
wow.
Your biggest day that I saw there, you did 117 commits. 117 commits. That's insane. And they were all commits too. I drilled down into it, and like I feel like I'm having a good day if I get maybe 15 or 20 commits in. How do you get to be so prolific that you're actually writing this much code?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to this one. I would love to.
Those days are blurs, right?
You must be one of those guys that's pissing everybody else off because they're changing the ground under their feet all the time.
Yeah, but I do have a life. I need to say that I go out with friends. I do all this stuff. But yeah, I don't know how this.
You'd be at the movies and like go, oh, I gotta get back to the computer and do this work.
Do you do a lot of really small commits?
Yeah. I tend to keep the commits really small, and it's something that I learned over and over the past. So the company I work for, we have this product. It's a Java portal, and it's open source. It has an enterprise version, but it's mainly open source. And there's a layer on the top of it that is the UI framework, which is also open source. And in this UI framework, the way we handle everything, so I do a feature, and then when I finish implementing that feature, I send to someone. This guy will be my reviewer, and this guy will point everything out, and then this guy will send to another guy. So we have this really strict review process, which is really nice. It slows down things, but you learn a lot over the time. And when I started working with this kind of process, I realized that if you want to help someone to understand what's happening in your code, you need to have the commits really, really small, because otherwise will be like just a big chunk of code that you don't understand what's happening, and the people that we will review will not understand what's happening, and you after 6 months will not understand either. So when you do those little commits, it's much easier to understand, and that's a kind of philosophy that I try to keep.
And so when you do those and you put it out there, then other developers come back with feedback, and that generates more little commits, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's
there
more
are guys that are much more crazy than me. Sindre Sarhus, do you know that guy? He's from Norway. So he creates lots and lots of node modules. And TJ Holloway-Chuck, the same thing. Substack is the same thing. So these guys really embrace this philosophy of having little pieces of code that are spread, and you just use that little piece. I think it's a good approach. It's really hard, but it's a really good approach to follow.
Yeah, I think that happened to me when I started learning Git. Was they had these large commits, and then you start working with a larger team, and you realize, oh my God, I got to start having sensible commit messages. I have to provide some details in there. Maybe use Git notes. But the key is to, like, once you have some working piece, push it, right? So, and constantly pulling. Definitely good advice for sure.
It comes back to that concept of modularity, of building small things. And every developer that I talk to has either discovered this or been taught it somewhere along the way, is using these small pieces of things that fit together well. And that seems to be at least partly what web components about is not just reusability, but composability. And so it's interesting the way on the web we're learning all those lessons all over again. And now we have package managers for the web, and we have lots of different ways of making modular stuff on the web. And it's kind of hard to go back in time and imagine what it was like 10 years ago. I vaguely remember it, kind of a haze, but when you didn't have that, you couldn't go to Bower and say, hey, bring in this package.
Yeah.
Do you see any evolution of that? Web components obviously are an evolution of some of those ideas. Do you see where we might be going beyond that, or how these things might work together that we don't realize yet?
I think we're just starting to create this path. You know, there's these few developers that are embracing this philosophy really well, but not all of them. You know, most of people, they just are used to build this really big projects with this really big pieces of code, and they're not thinking, hey, maybe this is something that other people can use it. Should I put this inside of a module? And what happens is that people think that is over engineering. So, hey, I'm just putting this little piece of code into another module. Why I'm doing that?
Yeah, it brings me back to jQuery classes, right? Where you'd have like a model, a view, and a controller for everything that you built with jQuery.
Yeah, so I think now we are relearning everything. You know, so we started doing this little piece of code, and then we started to build big applications, and then we need to relearn how to develop again. You know, if you're developing with Node, this is more easier for you to understand that you just fetch this little piece of code and you use it. And I think that's what needs to happen with front end too. And this is not something that we are doing right now.
Yeah, I think people need to understand too, this is going to have its own set of problems, right? We're going to have different problems. We're going to solve some of the older problems, and we'll have some new ones. Like it's pretty crazy that people think this is either going to be the save all or the end of the web.
Yeah, that's true. So people can build like truly bad pieces of code using web components, using any other technology, and this will continue to happen. It's not like the sacred hail that will save everybody.
No, but it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Like you spoke, speaking of which too, like we spoke earlier, you were at Scotland JS, and I saw it on YouTube. I wasn't lucky enough to be over there, but you had this whole demonstration which you had like you turn off the lights, and you had a web component that had used light sensors, and you used tracking JS, which I believe a friend of yours had created as well, who works with you, and there was some exciting things there. I mean, do you see a lot of this turning into components, not just being for mobile and the desktop, but also for using these components for interfaces of robotics or other types of things?
I think this will be much more usual in the future. Right now, since we have this polyfill layer, so you are importing a JavaScript that just helps you running this piece of code in the browser,
Yeah.
And then you have the library if you're using Polymer, for example. And then you need to import another JavaScript file, for example, if you're using the tracking JS library, or if you want to use jQuery inside of your custom element. So right now we have all those JavaScript files, and it sucks that you need to import all of them. But I think in the future, this will be much more usual, to import a library inside of your element and use it. But since all these libraries are very big, this is a problem, right? So Bootstrap, for example, if you try to rewrite Bootstrap in web components, it's really, really hard. Lots of people already tried to do it because it's just this big CSS file. And even if it's just like other CSS files, like if they're using Sass, and you can see the difference, even though it's really hard to implement, because the CSS for, let's say, the model component, it uses a CSS from the grid, and then it uses another piece of CSS from the typography CSS. And so if you try to separate all those stuff, it's really hard into a component. But so that's why I think that we need to change our mind and change the way we create stuff on the web. I think this is happening in the Node.js environment, but it's not happening in the front-end environment yet. But I think it will, because we have all these mobile problems, network, and we need to handle it.
Well, typically with Node too, you're building for one JavaScript runtime, right? You may use different versions of Node, but you're going to use just that build for that one. Whereas you have to worry about different versions of the browsers, the Chrome, not only desktop but mobile, and any other, like accessibility type of tools that would read these as well. So there's a lot more challenges there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
there is more challenges, but at the same time, if you're like, I'm building a model, so why don't you just keep the model in a separate module? You don't need to put like 30 other modules in the same package. Just keep this separated, and someone will need just the model for the application. Just like lots of people started to complaining about jQuery because, hey, I don't want this. It's not that big, but lots of people complain that we don't need jQuery anymore because there's this huge JavaScript file. And the jQuery answered like, hey, everything's separate. Hey, you just need to, if you want to use the Ajax part, here it is. If you want to use the DOM manipulation part, here it is. So I hope this start to everybody use this kind of way of developing too.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a challenge with the libraries, like you said, as far as people want to work with stuff like D3 or Bootstrap or, any of these libraries. I see like Polymer's playing with the idea of doing imports, where you have one element that just imports a JavaScript library. But I mean, for stuff like CSS, I know that I've struggled with getting the platform, even the polyfills, to work well with host and shadow and deep, all those selectors that are specific to custom elements. So it's even harder for CSS than JavaScript to solve right now because the support's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had that?
True.
Have you had that experience?
Yeah, in the beginning when we were doing front-end stuff, it's starting to emerge the CSS frameworks, and the CSS frameworks, they were not using CSS namespaces. So when you import this framework, it might break something in your page and you were really, angry because of that. And then having CSS namespaces in CSS libraries was a good practice. So everybody said that, hey, this is a good thing to do. But then Bootstrap came and they were not using CSS namespaces at all. But everybody loved using Bootstrap because it changed the whole style of your page and you didn't need to worry about having your H1 that ugly as it is. So I think in web components, it's different because we don't want to be that intrusive, The idea is that you will have this element, you will import it, and this will not break any other part of your application. And there's so many challenges in the CSS side because it's much harder to build a polyfill for CSS, right? It's not something that you just need to. JavaScript, everything's so mutable that you can just apply and do whatever you want. But in CSS, it's different. So that's a big challenge.
Yeah, the encapsulation is great for a lot of things, but with the shadow DOM. But if you build out the CSS, you make it look the same, but then you want to theme it inside of an application. That's definitely a challenge. Yeah,
and there's another challenge that is not only you want to theme from outside, you as a component author, you need to make sure that your element is responsive to, because you don't want to build something that it's like 600 pixels width and that's it. If you're open in your mobile device, everything will break. So there's so many new things that we need to learn right now. It's the same.
Yeah. So you've worked with like all the different layers on top, like Xtags, Brick, and you've worked with Polymer quite a bit too. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the generator element project that you have now based on your boilerplates?
Yeah, sure. So as I said before, we started with this one boilerplate. It was under my user in GitHub. It was only the Polymer boilerplate. But that's not a good thing. We don't want to just use Polymer. There's Xtags, and you can build web components using vanilla JavaScript. So we created then the Xtag boilerplate and then the element boilerplate, which is just vanilla JavaScript. After that, we also created hello world examples for each one of those. So this hello world examples is just something that is really straightforward for someone to look at how to build the most easiest component ever. And then we don't want, at the same time that we have all these three boilerplates, we don't want to all the time click on the fork button and replace some of the strings that it's inside of that repo. So we use Yeoman to generate all those three boilerplates. So we have this only one Yeoman generator. It's called generator element. It's on NPM. And so when you are in your terminal, you just type yo element, and it asks you, hey, what do you want to use? Do you want to use Polymer, Xtag, or vanilla JavaScript? You choose the option you want, and you generate your element. And you can also generate a whole repo that contains other elements. So that's what the generator element is all about. And last week, a guy called Batonis, he started to work in a Slush version of this. So there's this new project called Slush that is, it's like Yeoman, but it's built on top of Github and in this extreme concept. So we also have the same piece of code written for strings, and it's called Slush element. I think I have the link here. Yeah, Slush custom element.
As far as the components are, there's a lot of, today with JavaScript especially, we have these the data binding for like in Angular. I'm most familiar with Angular, so I could speak to that, where you have bidirectional data binding, and by the specs, there's no such thing in the web component specs as far as like node binding or template binding, but there is this concept in Polymer, and I don't know if Xtags has it. Have you? I mean, do you feel like that this should be part of the actual specs?
Yeah. So this is something that is really, really useful. So two-way data binding is something that it's so easy to do, and it's not so easy to do, but it's so easy to use as a developer. And it's something that it's built on Polymer. It's not on Xtag, and it's so when I built the Hello World example, for example, I was creating this Hello Worlds for those three solutions, for Xtag, Polymer, and vanilla JavaScript. And you can go to GitHub and see the difference of the amount of code that I need to read to write, just because there was no this data binding feature. I think this is something that it's really, really powerful. I'm not sure if it's something that it should be inside of the web component spec, but this is something really, really useful, and this is one of the reasons why I prefer using Polymer over any other solution for web components. So
Dominic DeNicola did a great talk on ES6, The Good Parts. I don't know if you've watched that, but he talked about template strings, which is a feature with JavaScript. So, which is you use the backticks as like your string areas, and one of the cool things that's obvious is you don't have to do the string concatenation plus and then have all the things in there. But he demonstrated how you could use these as templates within JavaScript that you would just interpolate, because it provides interpolation inside of the template string, and you could turn it into a function to do that interpolation. So are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way. So templating binding, that there's also this feature in Polymer, and what they do is just extending the capabilities of HTML template element. So now we have this template element, and what Polymer does, so they add these new attributes for this template. You have like bind, you have repeat, you have if conditionals and everything. And you can interpolate those things like functions. So I think this is something that it's a really important piece of everything. Web components is nice because it's just those little pieces. And one of these pieces is the template spec. Now we have isolated solution for it too, because we had so many template libraries like Mustache and handlebars and everything. But I think it's a good way. Template binding, it's very important.
Yeah, we recently did, Christian and I, we did a Google Hangout where we talked about it, specifically in Polymer. It's pretty different than working with Angular, because Angular you could put on any element, right? You could do like ng repeat, ng if, but template binding is specific to the template tag. So it's definitely just as powerful, but we found that the use cases were slightly different in implementation.
That's nice. I haven't played with AngularJS yet, but I'll take a look into these differences.
Yeah, I mean,
Looks like.
Go ahead, Christian. Sorry.
Looks like the next version of Angular is going to be more modular and broken apart, and maybe be able to work with web components better as well.
Yeah, and Ember has an interesting model too with their Ember components. Eric Brin was recently talking about it. I don't know much about it in practice, but it seems like they're following similar ideas, and then you'd be able to work with web components inside those libraries.
Yeah. So other frameworks and those really popular frameworks that we have now, like Ember, Angular, they will slowly start to using things from web components, but not the whole thing. Right. Just like GitHub. So GitHub is now using custom elements. So all those dates that you see on GitHub, like 30 minutes ago. So all those little dates, those are custom elements. They extend the date. They extend the time element, and they put their own stuff inside of it. But they are not using other parts like HTML imports. They are not using it. They are just registering the element and put it inside of the page. So that's what I think it will happen with all these frameworks too. So Ember will see something that it's really important for them. Like, hey, we need custom elements. So then we'll put the custom elements back inside of it and all the custom elements features. And slowly they will use some parts, but not everything, I think the frameworks that we use, everything will be like Xtags, Polymer, but Ember, Angular, all those frameworks, I think they're starting to using this new stuff slowly as soon as they got more supported in browsers.
Nice. Yeah, I recently I saw that web component. Actually, why don't we talk about webcomponents.org first? Because you did customelements.io, and then you started you got to know Adi Osmani and a few other really key people in the web components community. What led to building out webcomponents.org, and what is it for those who are listening?
Yeah, so the idea behind webcomponents.org is a place to document best practice. So we knew that lots of people will be interested in web components in the future. Lots of people are interested in web components right now. And we wanted a place to discuss the best practice. Let's say a framework author wants to implement something, and how is the best way to handle those situations? How can we do accessibility stuff using web components? How can we improve testing in web components? How can I do all those questions that don't have the right answer right now? But we need to discuss and figure out what's the right answer. So that's what was the motivation behind webcomponents.org. We started building in the end of last year. It was like a really big project, and we first started with some members from the Polymer team, the Xtag team, and me and some guys from the community. And then I called my sister. We needed a designer. We didn't have budget to hire designers and everything, so it's just a community project. So I talked to my sister, hey, let's design this thing for me, and then she designed it. And it was like using help from everybody to build the project. And now it's finally live. We have the domain, we have everything. And I'm really happy and really excited that we have this thing online right now. So you can find browser support information, you can find the specs, you can find articles, you can find presentations. There's this presentation about Ember and web components there. So there's lots of things, and I think that will be the place to look forward and to study. If you want to know more about it, I think that's the perfect place to go.
Yeah, it's a great resource. Thank you for putting that together. It's pretty awesome that everybody's coming together, and it's really great to see this happening. You used to not see this, right? Where people getting together, or at least earlier in my career.
Yeah, I could never imagine an effort like that. We have been doing those meetings with Hangouts like for a while, since last year. So we have this bi-weekly meeting, and we talk about what we are doing in web components, and it's so nice to see the collaboration of these companies, and like everybody's so passionate about you. They didn't need to work in those companies to just help with this project. Everybody's so interested and so excited about this, and we don't want to make the same mistakes we did in the past. So we're trying to make sure that everything will be nice and people will love and see web components as we see.
Mm-hmm. And webcomponents.org has its own GitHub, I saw, and there's a lot of really great repositories on there.
Yeah, so we got this username. It was really hard to get the web components username too, but it was I needed to track the guy. It was a organization that was like inactive for 2 years, and I was tracking the guy that was maintaining it. And then we finally got it, and we moved everything from there. So customelements.io was a project that was in a separate organization, and the boilerplates was more with me, and then we moved everything to web components. And we hope we have more stuff there. Like, there's a place in webcomponents.org called Sandbox, and it's a place to discuss best practice along, problems that are solved by lots of people. Let's say, how can we create a carousel? How should we create a model? So maybe we'll implement those elements using vanilla JavaScript and put it there. But there are lots of stuff that you can see. There's Chrome Web Components extension, the Yeoman generators are there, the source code for webcomponents.org, customelements.io, the Hello World examples, the boilerplates, everything's there.
Yeah, it's really great just to see all that together. I had seen similar, like you said, the playground that you have there. I've seen similar stuff on Polymer's repositories. Like they used to have Polymer Dev. I think it's local now, or there was a playground one. It's really amazing to see out in the open how a lot of this stuff is happening. I saw that there was one particular one on webcomponents.org that there's a fetch service for getting a list of the components. So if you're a command line person, this is pretty useful. Do you feel like there's a place for having an API into this information, so that if people wanted to pull that information into an application they could do that?
Yeah, that's a nice question. When you first started the customelements.io project, we had to make the decision about what this was going to be. Is this going to be a new registry only for web components? Should we do something that already exists? And the decision we made, and the decision that we want to keep, is that project should be just a gallery. We don't want to create another registry for front-end packages and something that is separated only for web components, because we already have Bower, we already have component. There are people that are putting their front-end code on NPM. So we decided that we didn't want to go in that way. But we do want to provide more APIs and more stuff that people can just consume those lists. There's a project called component.kitchen. I don't know if you have seen this one, but it's like customelements.io. They have launched it in SF HTML5 too. So it's a different approach that it's more like a gallery too. But you have their own page. You can see who is the author, what's the version last update. It's more complete, I think. So there's those options now. We have so many ideas to implement, and providing RESTful APIs, it's a good thing we want to do, but I'm not sure if we're going to provide like command line tools to register your element. I think that's a path that we should just continue Bower to handle everything. What we do with this fetch service project right now is just to grab the list of web components that we have for those repos that don't want to use any other front-end package manager. So there are people that don't want to use them. So, okay, we agree and we respect that decision. So we grab those repos and we call the GitHub API, and then we fetch all those informations from their repos, and we merge those informations with all the repos that are tagged with the web components keyword in Bower. So that's what we do. And then we have this JSON file and we use it to build custom elements. So that's what we have now, and we are thinking new stuff and new ways of interacting and searching for web components. And yeah, we welcome your ideas, and I noticed that you already created an issue about it. but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you though. Package management is a tough thing to, because you don't want to have duplicate pieces like we do already. And then the Node community has dealt with this with NPM and people just piecing all these different modules in there, and then you have duplicates of these, and which one do you choose? And that's something we'll have to deal with in the web components. So it does make sense to keep it with Bower, but it is good that you guys are tying it back to Bower and component and these other places, so that, because that's one thing that would be daunting. It's like when you searched for jQuery plugins back in the day. Now you got to read, and anybody who has the most documentation wins, right? You'd look at and see who forked it the most, or who pulled it the most, because you don't know what you're going to get. You want to make sure that there's validation and testimonials. So it's definitely a challenge with that. So yeah, it sounds like you guys have thought about that pretty well.
Yeah, there is this one idea that came in an event in London. I forgot the name of the event. But the idea is to have a community peer-reviewed of gallery of web components. So this is one idea. It's not that easy to do because you need like human beings reviewing the code. And you can do that for 300, but we cannot do that for like 1,000 per day. And I think this will be something that is not a huge number to accomplish in the future. So we're thinking about these possibilities, but there's so many things. This is the exciting part of all this stuff that we're talking about. There's so many things to, develop the best practice of this stuff, or, there's so many things to do, and it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's amazing too. Like one thing I've noticed is, a lot of the Dart community has really taken well to this, and Dart is really growing in popularity, I think, and Google has added in, and they have a publishing system called Pub, which is like their equivalent to Bower for Dart, right? So one big thing I find is that there's not a lot in Pub as far as web components. There's the Polymer stuff that's added in, but you'd have to use straight JavaScript, and it seems like there's a divergence in the communities there. Do you feel that way, or maybe I'm imagining it? There's like a distaste for the JavaScript piece versus Dart for that, or Dart is too overwhelming for a JavaScript person, maybe. Yeah,
I think there are people adopting Dart, and there are lots of people that loves it and think that's the future. And there are those other people that just hate the fact that they have Dart, and Google is pushing Dart really hard. So I don't know, maybe in the future they will want to, you'll be able to just import script.dart and it will work in Chrome without any need of any other stuff. But what about the other browsers? They are going to, interpret Dart too or not? So I'm not quite comfortable about this new technology. I don't think that, No, I really like JavaScript. And
Preaching to the choir here, but
yeah.
Dart does seem intriguing though, like in a lot of ways, and the community is really rich and talented. So I would like to explore it some. I just found that like Dart JS I guess is the like what you'd have to use to interpret the JavaScript, which is my understanding. I don't know that, I'm not a Dart developer, but I think that it doesn't give you the performance tweaks that you would need from a Dart VM that would give you the advantages that Dart provides. But it does seem like it would be nice to mix that, maybe have a connection with Pub or something. I don't know. I don't know what the answer would be, but it was interesting that there's these two communities that are at the same goal, all trying to work with web components.
Yeah, I agree.
We didn't mention interacting, and one of the things that I've been playing different ways to do is how these components interact together, and I think that's still not decided as a best practice yet. We have a few ways we can do it, right? One of the ways is local storage, right? Or you could use local forage if you need some async. A way to use local storage using events, which will bubble up through the shadow DOM, and simple adder IO. And the adder IO is limited in the fact that the parent will be able to see the changes, but you'll need a mutation observer on top of it, from my understanding, at least in my practice. So have you found that some of these ways work better for certain situations? Have you encountered the same difficulty as far as standardizing these sort of things?
Yeah, I like the mutation observe approach that you mentioned, this last one, but again, those solutions, they are being thought. People are thinking about those, and it's different for Xtag, and it's different from Polymer.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one, it's really hard to answer to, because it's something that it's being established, and we don't have the right answer now.
It's good we have options though, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's good to have options.
Yeah, here's one question. The web components seem to be a lot about making these neat little packages of things, but is there some, for people that don't know like me, is there some kind of a protocol for communicating between them, for stitching them together?
Yeah, this protocol will be the HTML import spec, which is just importing something, So we are used to import JavaScript, we're used to import CSS, and now you can do the same thing, but importing another HTML file inside of an HTML file. So that's the protocol. The idea is that a developer that doesn't know anything about any other technology, that guy that only knows HTML, CSS, that guy could be able to build web components with any other effort, without needing to know how to handle things in the terminal. So this is a challenge that we have right now, because at the same time, we want to create an environment that is extensible and an environment that can build great stuff on top of it. But we don't want to restrict people that are beginners and people that just want to play with the technology. So right now in CustomElements.io, we have lots of really complex elements, and at the same time, we have elements that is just a guy that just want to play with the technology. And should we, create this barrier, like you need to know Bower. So we have this dependency, But Bower is not. It shouldn't be this wall for that people that want to start learning this new technology, because to that person to have Bower, they need Node.js installed. And if you are a Windows user, it's a little bit harder for you. And so there's so many things that you need to put in a balance, But at the same time, we want to say, hey, people, hey, community, let's put your elements in Bower, because other people can use it and we can share it, and you'll need to put tags on it. You need to have a history, release versions and everything. So it's a really hard balance, but yeah.
Yeah, the imports, you bring up a good point. It is great because you don't need, like you said, you don't need Bower. You just need a URL, right? And then
You just
can
need a
pull it
URL.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this, the App Maker initiative from Mozilla. So they have the Firefox OS and everything, and they are using web components on Firefox OS. So the calendar is an element, and all these pieces are elements too. And they have this App Maker app, which is just a place where you can drag and drop, like Polymer Designer tool. So you drag and drop elements into your application, and you just build your app there. And would be awesome to just, you have the URL of your element, you just import it. It's something that it's so easy to do. If all the CSS and all the JavaScript is encapsulated in that HTML, it will work. So it's something that it's really, really exciting right now. It's amazing that it's just a link tag.
Yeah. It's been really exciting time. I mean, when I started working with JavaScript, it was, still considered to be a second-class citizen. And HTML and CSS was a joke. You just, okay, great, it looks pretty. I've put in some markup. I'll have you do that, and I'll just do the real hard stuff like the services. And things have sort of, I guess evened out now, right? Where these technologies are starting to catch up to native and back-end pieces. It's really exciting time. I mean, I could babble on forever about this stuff, Zeno. I mean, you're an amazing figure inside of the web components community. So I really appreciate you personally coming on to talk with us today. Is there anything out there that you'd like to share with the listeners? I mean, obviously webcomponents.org, customelements.io. But is there anything you'd like to share out there?
Well, I think that's it. I'm really happy. I want to thank you for the invitation. It's so nice to talk to other people that are excited as we are about this technology. So I could be here like for 5 hours with you guys. So it was a really nice talk. And I think that's it. For you that you're listening and everything, just keep in touch and take a look in webcomponents.org. That's the best place to learn. And if you have any feedbacks and insights about what should we do, this is something that it's a standard, and we are trying to build the future of the web platform. And if everybody could join us, it would be awesome, and that would be really nice.
And if people want to find you, what's the best way to catch you if they want to ask you questions or?
Okay, yeah, so I think Twitter is the best channel because it's really small, only 140 characters. So you can just ping me on Twitter. It's Zeno Rocha. And you can also send me an email. My website is also zenorocha.com. My GitHub is Zeno Rocha, github.com/Zeno Rocha. So it's everything the same username.
That's awesome. Thanks again. And this wraps up today's episode. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
This episode comes to you, at least in part, through the support and sound equipment generously supplied by 3 Pillar Global. 3 Pillar is a software product development company in Fairfax, Virginia, and 3 Pillar is a leader in creating purposeful and innovative product experiences. 3 Pillar was recently named to the Washington Post Top Workplaces list for 2014. So if you want to follow 3 Pillar on the Twitters, it's @3PillarGlobal. And to find out more and see current job openings, please visit 3pillarglobal.com. That's 3, the number, pillarglobal.com.